So, and also this third album as well. So there's been huge changes. What's it like when you come to London? Is it different every time?
It's been different every time, and honestly, we've played Underworld twice, and we actually played there earlier in the spring, and it was a sold out show for us. So that was like the first time that we've ever had like a really huge
reception for just
yeah.
us. The first time we played there was with Yob. So
yeah. So I've been enjoying this transition in your music, and because I guess from Devoid and Redemption and then into the Foundations of Burden album, there's just been these huge big soundscapes and long journeys within each song and the melodies and everything. But now you've kind of still got the heaviness and the technical aspects of the two guitars and everything, but it feels like a bit more proggy. Is that something that's been intentional or a bit of a change?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, basically like we were waiting for our like technical abilities as musicians to catch up with our sort of like idea of what we wanted to do as a band. Yeah. So yeah, it was, we've had kind of a grander vision of what we want to do as a band for a really long time. Yeah. And after spending the last 6 years touring a good part of the year every year, like we like finally felt like we had the firepower to do the sort of record that we had wanted to do for a long time.
So this is something that instead of like being an evolution, is something that's kind of something that you had it in your mind as an idea that you wanted to create, and then you're just able to achieve it.
Yeah, and it's been evolving as time has gone on. We spend quite a bit of time conceptualizing the sorts of things that we want to do even before any of the songs are written. And also like a lot of the material on Heartless was being written for basically like since before the first album even came out.
So yeah, because I heard an interview with you guys a couple of years ago before Heartless came out, and the guy was saying, are you looking forward to it? And you were saying, oh, actually, we're just waiting for it to come out because it's been so long, in gestation. And so so now it's here.
Yeah, there was some material on Heartless that we had been working on since the second album too. Yeah. So
even some riffs
and some stuff that was even older.
Songs that were like around before the first album even came out, like stuff that we were working on with the idea of it being on our very first album, and then we kind of put it to the side.
Because it sounds different sonically. Is that just something that was just came along differently? Was it the sound as it is on Heartless? Is that something you still had in your mind even sonically with the first album or even on Fender?
Yeah, I'd say that overall, the amount of breathing room that's on Heartless was something that we've always tried to achieve. But as songwriters, we weren't able to really get the level of dynamics, even in the songs themselves, to where that would come through and once it actually was put to tape. So, the first album is mostly just one giant block of sound because that's the way the songs are. But with Heartless, there's so much more peaks and valleys of like dynamics. It's not just 100% like metal as fuck or quiet. Like there's places in between. So having a more open sounding production, I think, benefited the material quite a bit.
So it sounds like Foundations was the appropriate kind of, again, a bridging point. So in terms of your evolution of your style, it seems very natural because Foundations had the heaviness, the bigness, but then with the space in it as well, and still the melodies, and the melodies in the guitar sound. Yeah, because you're able to kind of capture that in your voice and with the guitars as well, because you have the solo as well as in Watcher in the Dark. Some riff sequences as well are just so big sounding. I just really enjoy it basically. Good. And then you're still able to have that in Heartless, like for example, but there's a journey in it as well. The journey still seems to be the same.
Kind of like harkening back what you were talking about, the kind of similarities between like doom and prog and whatever the scene here. I think like in a way we finally worked towards like having a more like pastoral sound on Heartless. Right. Yeah. Whereas it's not necessarily like just quiet or loud. Like sometimes it's like it like feels more orchestrated because of like different like chord voicings that we use, like the way that the instruments are being played during certain sections.
Yeah, I know what you mean, because it's not necessarily a lighter, because it's kind of heavy in a way, because like in A Plea for Understanding, the end bit when it goes into that peak, because again, another bit I enjoy about your music are the troughs and then crescendos, which is fantastic. In the end of Plea for Understanding, you have still that, the blend of the two guitars is almost like a soundscape. You want to listen to it in like 3D and I'd be surrounded by speakers and hear all the little differences and the intricacies of it as well, and it kind of feels like that a little bit.
Yeah, that's how we record our music. There's many layers of rhythm guitars and other like stuff that's kind of hidden below the surface, and it is panned around, so it is actually three-dimensional. It's not like mixed in 5.1 or anything, but yeah, I mean, yeah.
Oh, you have ideas about that as well, I guess. I guess as you've gotten, you've got this idea of how you wanted this album to sound. Do you have now ideas of what you can play with and technical side of things?
That's a constant thing, man. I'm obsessed with the idea of like arranging stuff sonically in the studio, and I mean, the way we do things live, we try not to add so much in the studio that we can't perform our songs live, but there's certain things that you can do in the studio to make fairly simple elements sound really grandiose and like just beautiful and huge. And usually the way we approach the studio isn't so much of like adding layers of like musical elements, but more layers of sonic elements, and we spread those all over. So like what sounds like one guitar lead might actually be 5.
Right.
Like, and they're just EQ'd slightly different, use different guitars, different amps, and then mix them around in the spectrum to where it sounds like this giant symphony, but it's really just one part.
I see what you mean, right? Alison changed it a little bit, I think, as well.
That's completely what I ripped it off of. I read that in a interview with Jerry Cantrell when I was like 16. I was like, that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Because, just get a bigness as well. Has there been an evolution in your songwriting? Because, because of the heaviness and the power, and there's almost like a masculine space that can come out a little bit. Has there been a kind of catharsis, or, has there been elements when it's been really personal, the music that you're sharing? And then has it evolved from there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's where it started to begin with. And, this band was inherently formed as a vehicle for catharsis, our own catharsis, and that's still what it is, really. Even some songs may be talking about stuff that doesn't directly relate to each of us personally, but it's things that we are concerned about and things that we care about. So taking things that bother us in our day-to-day lives or things that are weighing on our minds and turning it into something that's ultimately, to us at least, like beautiful in some way, I think is a form of like exercising those negative thoughts and feelings and turning it into something positive.
When you have to keep playing them live, though, do you kind of come back to those moments, or do you feel like it's still better that you've still, through describing it and letting it go, is still...
At times. It depends on the song. I mean, the more you play a song, I'd say, like some of the early stuff on our first album, it would take me like half an hour or so before I could talk to anyone, because I would just be like incredibly in that space, a very dark space. But we've played hundreds and hundreds of shows, so I can deal with it a little better. But yeah, there's certain songs that when we play them, it like affects me for sure.
Yeah, okay, but is it a bit better now?
Yeah, in general, I'd say.
I was just asking these guys, when you're playing back in London now, is it different each time? Because you've been back a few times now. Do you keep enjoying it?
Yeah, it's great. It's fun every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been better and better.
Yeah, it's been better. Like we've always had a really, really great reception here, and we have a bunch of friends that live here, so it's always a good time.
Yeah. So you're able to come back and catch up with everybody and keep playing the music. So since you had ideas about how this album Heartless was going to sound, do you then have an idea of where you go from here?
Yeah, we have some like rough. I mean, like Joe was saying, we're constantly conceptualizing things. We've been touring since all year, so like we haven't really had time to write anything, but not much at least. But there's plenty of ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
And we spent a lot of time talking about exactly that, like concepts of like ideas that we want to try. Like when we get home, we're gonna have a few months off. All of us are like really ready to like get back like workshopping again, pretty much like trying to like execute some of the ideas that we can like hear in our head and that we've talked about to each other, and like see what can come of it and like where it will go from out of the idea stage into something that is actually in something that exists in reality.
Yeah, for me, like the writing process is by far my favorite aspect of anything about being in a band. So like I'm very excited to go back and do that. That's all I do when I'm home. I just write constantly.
Great.
Yeah.
So there's constant flow that kind of comes through you.
Yeah, if I go too long without being able to work on something new, I start to get cranky.
But do you have a little system for that when you're out and about? Do you have like even notebooks or anything around, or anything you can just literally get?
Yeah, an iPad.
Mostly gets used to make like pounding industrial songs instead of
Or really, just really dumb shit.
Well, like you kind of all the apps on there where you can kind of create stuff as you're out and about.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. I mostly just make really dumb techno. But, yeah.
Stuff to kind of entertain you and dance to when you're out and about.
Something to get really.
The brain is dancing in that.
Yeah.
Just really, really great pleasure to meet you guys. Kind of just as I said, I discovered you guys here, and I'm here able to see you, and just been joyful, and also just to see another something positive coming out of Arkansas rather than the Clintons. I'm sure you.
I'd consider that more positive than our current senator, but that's a whole nother story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of positivity that comes out of Arkansas. So.
Oh well, you guys are here. Come on.
We're like
and Johnny Cash. That's about it.
yeah, he's real positive.
Yeah, there you go. So you're here to change that. Going to share something, some positive vibes. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
It's chronic ritual.